DL just only talks, and we just
I've been trying to get
blessed by what he says.
All right, here we go. We're going live.
4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Hi. It is another Sunday afternoon of the Real Interfaith Dialogue here on Blog Talk Radio and the Global Patriot Radio Network. And we are also here in the Crossing the Crescent discussion group here on StreamYard, where we stream the show live to our Crossing the Crescent Facebook page, Radio Free Kafiristan Facebook page, and also our YouTube channel. And we have different. In this show, we try to bring up different topics every single week, but they are going to center around Islam and Christianity, presenting the strengths, the weaknesses, and the arguments for and against both of these religions. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. Those of you who are showing up in chat, I see you there, Wadu, Brian, Darcy, and the Dr. Kufar Phobia. Thank you all for coming. So today's topic is going to be, we're going to be discussing the reliability of the Bible versus the Quran. Which one can we trust? Can we trust both of them? Can we trust only one of them? Can we not trust any of them? So today we're going to be bringing up some different points that present the strengths of the reliability of the Bible. And of course, I'm going to be bringing the strengths and the weaknesses of the Quran. And if you want to call in, or if you want to come up on here on mic, if you're in chat and you want to present some of the strengths of the Quran, or show some of the weaknesses of the Bible, just go ahead and type that in there, and we'll go ahead and see if we can get you onto the show. Before we get going on today's show, I have to admit something. I have probably, since 1988, had this sycophantic type admiration of Rush Limbaugh. I have not been able to listen to him on a regular basis for quite a few number of years now. But when I was in the Army, and if I would have some time when I was in the office, or if I was downrange and I had access to, because we didn't have bat phones back then, you couldn't listen to my iHeartRadio or anything like that. I would listen to him as much as I could, and I would probably be what you call one of those. Who is this? Saya. I don't know Saya. How did Saya get into our group? Well, I'm going to let Saya in. And then I'm going to boot Saya if Saya.
Oh, that was me. I shared. So is there another link that I can share to other people? This person is an ex-Muslim.
Oh, he is. All right. Well, we want to talk to him.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, he's.
Okay.
I like him.
I didn't know, because we've had a lot of people come to this show and try to sabotage and booby trap this show before, and it's some of it's pretty disgusting.
Right. Is there another link that I can give to people that it doesn't jump them in the show?
Yes.
That you can just send it to me through a message. Yeah.
I'm just going to post it right here into the private chat. Paste, and there. That's the YouTube link right there. Do you see that? It's in private chat.
Welcome, Saya.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Saya, welcome. We appreciate you coming onto the show. Just let me finish what I'm doing here, and then we'll get to you. Okay. So, sycophantic relationship. That's what you could probably call it. But what Rush called us was charter listener ditto heads, and these were the days of when you would have he would have like updates, like he would have a condom update, and he would play Up and Away in My Big Balloon, or he would have gay activist updates. But one of the most famous updates he would have, they were called Gorbasms, and this is where everybody was infatuated with Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev, and anytime that people would talk about Gorbachev, they would talk about him in a most euphoric manner. And so and he also had something called collar abortions, and he had to stop those because of the the criticisms that he got. But this guy was, and the reason why I'm bringing up Rush is, of course, he finally passed away from his battle with cancer this week. And, when somebody like that, this somebody who's an iconic figure in your life, a lot of people have, they look up to athletes, they look up to they'll look up to preachers or things, people of this nature. It affects them because they follow them with, they put a lot of emotional energy into following them and listening to them. And this is what happened this week with Rush. Of course, I don't have any talent on loan from God like that poor man did. And I don't have his rich sense of humor and intellect and ability to analyze all kinds of different political ideas, things like that. But he was just he was an icon that I am going to miss because he had a lot of problems in his life. Everybody has problems. Everybody has. We live with sin every day. If you look at his marriage, I think I was married 4 times. He had a problem with. He got addicted to Oxycontin, I think it was, where he after he had some type of surgery, back surgery, something like that, he got addicted to Oxycontin, had to go on rehab with that. He had to, just all kinds of problems in his life, and he lost his hearing, and that's not good if you're in radio and you have to be able to listen to people. But he was a born again Christian. He trusted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior, and I know he is today. He is today in his eternal rest. So God bless Rush and what he did. He was not the most unifying figure that our country has ever had, but he was most definitely an iconic figure for all them years. All right, so somebody wanted to chime in on that. Frank Kahn, you wanted to say something about that?
Yeah, I loved him. I really respected his point of view on so many issues. I loved listening to him for the years.
Yeah, the one issue that he really was able to drill down on and basically solidify for people was the issue of abortion, which I am just as pro-life as you could about imagine. And he was one of the pioneers that started this because when he first came on the air, our country, the majority of the people were pro-choice, if you that's what you call it, were pro-choice. And after he came on the air, it's shifted from being largely a majority pro-choice to 70%, 75% pro-life. So a lot of what he did and was able to do with the radio with his platform was just absolutely amazing. Okay, so Saya, did you want to say anything today, or are you just gonna come in here and chime in when you can? You look like a young fella. Do you know how old Saya is, Connie?
He sounds like he's in his like 30s or something.
Well, maybe that's his son. You got a good-looking son there. I don't know. Oh, there he is.
There he is. Yeah, say something, Saya.
Maybe he's having a problem with the mute button. Maybe he's shy like DL, and DL doesn't want to. DL's not shy. We know that. I see Adam is not here. Adam is over in chat. Dominique, let me send this to Dominique. Dominique, send me an email, ericsekifer@gmail.com, and I'll send you the link for the show that you can come in. All right, so let's get rolling on this Hamad Jama. Chris sent me like 6 slides Wednesday or Thursday when we were talking about what we were going to discuss today, and I kind of picked up on that and started to run with it, and thinking about what we could talk about, because they deal with the Sana manuscript, because it's a palimpsest and there's a lot of underwritings there, but also the underlying and the underpinning idea behind this was, can we trust the Quran? Can we trust the Bible? So Chris, in his infinite wisdom, this morning sends us all a Skype message and say, "Hey guys, sorry I can't be there today." He had to he got called into work, so he was not able to lead this today. And I was just going to change the subject entirely. I thought, but this is too good of a subject to run away from. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the reliability of the Quran and the Bible. And if you have anything that you want to chime in with, feel free to. And hold on, I don't know. Delta Dom. Okay, hold on. I got to jump over. If anybody want to talk, I got to jump over here and send an email real quick. I'm sorry. Nobody wants to talk. Does anybody have an opinions of?
Yeah, talk DL.
Delta Dom.
Why would anybody want to hear me talk?
If anybody want to talk, I got to jump over here and send an email real quick. I'm sorry.
I'm hearing an echo.
Yeah, somebody is. Does anybody have an opinions of? Okay,
Yeah,
hold
talk
on.
DL. Yeah, there is.
Okay, somebody is.
Why would anybody want to hear me talk?
If anybody want to talk, I got to jump over here and send an email real quick. I'm sorry.
I'm hearing an echo.
Close any of your double screens there.
Okay, hold on a second. Maybe I got something going on here. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me stop sharing my screen. This is Mr.
I think it
Amateur
sounds
Hour
pretty
here.
good now.
What we do?
Yeah, you did
here.
close it. It's good on my end now. There's no
Is it?
double.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Let me get over here and send Adam. Let's see here. Dominic Delta Dom at Hotmail. So let me send this to. I got to compose it here. Delta Dom at. What was it? Hotmail. I had a Hotmail account at one time because I was a history buff. I always loved history, and I made it short for his buff, and I sent an email to my wife, and she didn't open it because she thought it was something nasty. Somebody sending his buff email. So it's kind of a bad joke, but that's. You got to be careful on what your email accounts. Okay, Dominic, I just sent you the link for the show. Okay, so let me put this back up here so we can talk about the reliability of the Bible versus the Quran. And there we go. Okay, so let's look at the reliability of the Bible first. Let's just talk about what we see with the Bible. Now, I just kind of put it down into 4 simple sections here. When we look at the number of biblical manuscripts, archaeological discoveries, which is what we consider physical evidence, preservation of the text, and the time between when the New Testament was written and when the events of Christ's life, or the time that the events that they opine upon occurred. So when we look at the number of biblical manuscripts that we do have, the number is astronomical when compared to other literature or other works of the era. When you look at the works of Homer, or things that Homer's probably, that's not a good example. I guess that's 700-800 BC. But if you look at some of the other literary works at the time, I think the maximum number the highest number was like 25 copies, and those copies are like 900 years old. Are 900 years from the time that they were originally written. But when we look at the New Testament, you have over 5,800 Greek manuscripts. With that, you also have over 10,000 Latin manuscripts, and you have an additional 9,300 other manuscripts that are penned in different languages. So if you look just at the sheer number of manuscripts that we have, it's just there's just no comparison to anything else out there from that time or any other time, to be honest with you, because manuscripts are nothing but handwritten forms of the book. Compare that, and then also double down on that with the archaeological findings that we have in the Bible. And you compare that to what we see in the Quran, and we're going to be doing that here in just a minute. There is no comparison at all. If you start looking at, the number of places mentioned, the number of people mentioned, it's not even close. And then when you look at the archaeological evidence for just the existence of Mecca, there is none. There's zero. There's no evidence for 7th century Mecca out there. Nothing predates the 7th century. Everything is after the year 721 is the first year that something pops up on the chart. And then you look at the archaeological evidence that we have for the Bible, and there, if you look at any properly understood and interpreted passage of the Bible, there's no archaeological evidence out there that contradicts anything out that's been discovered. Everything that we've discovered from that region supports it. Everything. Number 3, the preservation of the text. One of the biggest complaints that we hear from Muslims is that your text has been corrupted. How can you believe a corrupted book? And when you ask them to define corruption, you never get a consistent, applicable definition of what corruption is. What they can do is they can go in and they can point to different variants from within the text itself, misspellings, word or sentences, they're reworded, or they can point towards duplicate passages in the manuscripts or things omitted and left out. But their problem is when they do this is that it doesn't change any major teaching of Christianity. It does not affect any major tenet of Christianity. And that's their problem. When we sit here and we look at the main difference between Christianity and Islam, and for me, it's the crucifixion of Christ. Christ not crucified means that we are dead in our sins as Christians. So when we think of one of the main tenets of Christianity, it's the crucifixion. Well, Islam denies that. There is nothing out there, none of the Bibles, there's no New Testament out there that states that Christ was not crucified. None. The only thing that we find and that they'll cite are Gnostic sources written down a century and a half after the events that they're commenting upon. So when we start talking about 99.5% accurate, that is absolutely phenomenal when you consider the transcription of manuscripts themselves. You don't get anything even close to that with any other work from antiquity. Not even close. And then we can compare them to Dead Sea Scrolls, and we can compare them to the Masoretic text that exists today. And I'm sorry, it just really is an uphill battle for them. And so I was looking at, I hate to admit this because Stephanie had on Facebook had cited this guy's blog. He's a known, we call him the perv here on our show because that's what he is. He's got a sick mind. But anyway, I went to his blog because I was looking at what she was citing and where he was getting his information from. And he's got like a whole page of, well, these are contradictions, or these are not contradictions, corruptions or changes in the Bible. And he lists all kinds of different variants, but none of them affect a tenet of Christianity. They're just minor differences is all they are. And to me, it's just desperation. Desperation is what it is. And then lastly, I would say that the date of the text that we have, the date of the Gospels that we have, are exponentially closer to the events from which they comment on than what you would find in, let's say, the Hadith. The Hadith were written down 2.5 centuries after the life of Muhammad. His biography was not penned for an entire century, and we don't even have any access to any of those copies. We have to go by what Hisham says, and his was 2 centuries after the fact. But when we look at the Gospels were written down within the lifetimes of the apostles themselves. And I put on there 70 AD purposely because most people would agree that the Gospel of John was the last gospel to be written. And when we look at chapter 5, verse 2 in the Gospel of John, it says, I looked it up this morning because I was going to put John 5:4, and I thought, oh, that doesn't sound right because that was the That was as a matter of fact, that's omitted from the text because it talks about the pool of Siloam. Let's see, John 5:2 says, now, the word says now, meaning currently, there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Now that's very problematic. If you adhere to a late writing of the Gospel of John, let's say 90 AD, 95 AD, because we know that the city of Jerusalem and the surrounding walls were all destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. This pool sits right next to St. Anne's Church. Somebody's got a hot mic. Dominic, is that Dominic? No, that was Saya. Yeah, it was Saya. Saya had a hot mic. Sorry about that. If you want to come up on mic, go ahead and just come up on mic if you want to. But this pool of Siloam, or Bethesda, I'm sorry, sits right next to this church. And when you think about it being excavated, it's been excavated, and the church was built later by the Crusaders. But when it's excavated, those colonnades don't exist anymore. Somebody needs to read through that. I didn't got time to read. I don't know who posted that. Crossing the crescent, if the Bible is corrupt, man-made. Who wrote that? Somebody's over on my Crossing Crescent page. I think I know who it is. Anyway, let's get that off of there. So the bottom line is that the reliability, we can trust the Bible. The Bible is about as reliable as a text as you could possibly get. Does anybody have anything that they want to add to that? Something that they feel is important that I might have not missed or emphasized?
Yes. Yes, Eric. I want.
Hi, George. Welcome. Yeah, I didn't see you sneak in there.
Hey, George.
I didn't.
Hi. So I wanted to emphasize that last point you made there at number 4, which says that the New Testament was written shortly after the events. Mm-hmm. That's very important. And you mentioned correctly about the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. Now, notice that the book of Acts goes through a number of things. Some would even say minute details. And Paul being shipwrecked, stoning of Stephen by the Jewish council. Remember, Stephen is stoned to death. It's in Acts chapter 7, if I remember correctly. Minute details about a number of things. Yet it did not mention the destruction of the temple in AD 70. Isn't that curious?
Right. And the only
thing like that, a peculiar thing, that an important traumatic event like that in Jewish history.
Something would have been said. I'm sure you're absolutely right.
Exactly. So it must have been written before AD 70, as you say.
Yeah, and I would also, if you look at the book of Acts, I always call the book of Acts Luke 2, because it's basically the second gospel of the spreading of the gospel message by the disciples. But the book of Acts ends with Paul in prison in Rome. And we know that Paul was martyred in Rome between 64 and 66 AD. So that puts the book of Acts before that. And then if you put the book of Acts before that, the Gospel of Luke has got to be there somewhere, 55 to 60 AD somewhere. And the Gospel of Luke draws heavily from the Gospel of Mark. So that people are putting Mark clear back to around 45 to 50 AD. So the more scholarship that is done on this, the closer we can certify that the Gospels were written closer to the events of the crucifixion. And then I also included here 1 Corinthians, is it 1 Corinthians 15? What the heck is wrong with that? Do I have that wrong? Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, 3-8. And that is a known creed, and scholars are putting that creed within. Some people have been as bold as put it within 6 months of the cross. I don't see how they do that, but they say, okay, 6 months of the cross. But they're saying up to 3 years from the cross.
But because there's more than one creed that's written before that time period, is because.
But this creed is what we find in 1 Corinthians in 15, and they're doing this by looking at how it flows, how people, because it was an oral culture, oral tradition, and in doing that, they would say that this creed was something that you would find from the early Christian church. They would, because it talks about death, deity, resurrection of Jesus Christ, all within those 5 short passages. So when we look at the reliability of the Bible, the number of manuscripts, Dan Wallace calls a blessing of riches. No, somebody knows this. I messed it up.
It's called an abundance of riches.
Abundance of riches. Okay.
Yeah, or something like that. I'll have to get his exact phrasing.
But but when you have that many, 25,000 manuscripts, 5,800 Greek manuscripts. Now, come on. Oh, you don't have any evidence for your Bible. Shut your pie hole. For crying out loud. And you got fragments. And one of the arguments is that, the Bible, we don't have any original text. Well, you don't have any original Qurans either. So why are you making that hypocritical assertion? But number two, the initial Gospels, when they were distributed, the letters were distributed, it was the Christians, the poor community. They had no power, and they would be persecuted, and they would write on papyrus, which is a very fragile paper. It disintegrates within years, and to have anything today is a miracle just by that in of itself. But second of all, the amount of persecution that they suffered and endured, and had those Gospels and those letters and writings taken, and if you were taken away from them, and if you were caught with any, you could be imprisoned, put to death, your whole family. I mean, it just sickens me when I start hearing, well, you don't have these manuscripts available. Then you look at the archaeological evidence that supports the Bible. We can say, okay, Jerusalem existed at the exact time, at the exact place where we say it was, exactly when we find exactly that. The preservation of the text, that was something that I was alluding to. And then the amount of time that the New Testament was written after that.
I've got a book, I think, in my library up here that deals with the fact of also the cost of how much it would actually cost to actually write a letter during the 1st century time period. Like, I think so they said for roughly something like the Book of Jude, it would cost them roughly £700 or $700 to actually write one book for that actual time period. So it's not only the cost of things; they would actually have to get the actual papyri, and then they would actually have to get. But it's a fascinating study, ancient letter writing. Just interesting.
The preservation. This is a book that I am reading right here. Hold on just a second. I got it right here. I'm in the process of reading it. It's written by Craig Evans, and it's called Jesus in the Manuscripts. And it talks about how well preserved these manuscripts, or how long people held. Let's put it this way: the length of time people were able to hang on to manuscripts themselves, and how long they were used for, and how well they were preserved by people who had the ability to preserve them. I'm not going to go any further into that. We need to get moving along. We're already 30 minutes into it, and we've only got one slide done. Oops. Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
I sent you some in Facebook Messenger, some pictures that I've made, which I've learned from Jay Smith. I took some of his pictures and wrote some things that, if you want to take a look at those and maybe share a thing or two.
Okay.
If not, I'm just sending them to you as we're talking.
Okay, I'm just looking to see what's here. Okay. Well, I can't read that. Not complete. Okay, these are some of these slides that I have. I already have these, so.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's just get through this, and then we'll get back to these here.
Yeah. Eric, if I could just jump in very quickly.
Yep, go ahead.
I want to emphasize the point I was making earlier about the AD 70 destruction of Jerusalem, because I know you know and you're very comfortable with it. But for other persons, I want them to understand how traumatic this was in Israel. This is their holy city, Jerusalem, and their holy temple. That was the most magnificent building, as you see the disciples showing it to Jesus, and Jesus predicting that it would be destroyed. Now, apparently the walls were actually it had gold, matted gold on the walls, and when the Romans attacked it, people were killed. Men, women, and children were killed. Blood flowed like a river, and they burnt down the building. But what actually happened is that the gold that was on the wall melted and went down in the cracks. So this is why you see there's no stones there now, because they actually pried the stones up. People later pried to get at the gold. And that's why the entire thing is destroyed. The point is, this beautiful, magnificent, most beautiful building in Israel was totally destroyed. And yet not one of the Gospels or any of the epistles mention this traumatic, important, history-changing event. It's clear that the Gospel, everything was, as Eric says in the slides, must have been soon or after the events. Must have been, because we know it took place in AD 70.
And I would also add to that, George, that I forgot to add, was that the reason why that people will say that the destruction of Jerusalem, or the Gospels were written after the destruction of Jerusalem, is because of what you just mentioned, that Jesus prophesied of that. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to marginalize the prophecy of Christ, is saying that I will build this temple again in 3 days. Well, the only way that he could have known that is if he would have been a true prophet of God. So therefore, we need to post-date these Gospels past then. And then also, if you look at the... Go ahead, Dio.
No, it's an anti-supernaturalist position, is what it is.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right.
You said it better than I did. I appreciate that. And on top of that, when we look at the book of Acts, it mentions the death of Stephen, and it mentions the death of a couple other people that are, I don't want to say they're inconsequential, but it does not mention the death of the brother James of Jesus. It does not mention the death of Peter. It does not mention the death of Paul. So when we look at the Gospel of Luke, well, we have to know that the Gospel of Luke predates Acts, and if Acts doesn't mention these things, then we can assume that Luke was written prior to this, which predates the destruction of the Jewish temple. And and I appreciate your emphasis on that, George, because when we start looking at one of those dates in history that people groups are identified with, for example, the destruction of the temple didn't happen. It was a 3-year siege. It was 67 to 70 AD. So when we look at the history of people, if we were going to say, let's say the United States lasts for another 1,000 years, we look back on our history, one of the things that we are going to be able to point a finger at is the Civil War. We would know that that is a significant event in our nation's history because we sat there for 4 years tearing our guts out. The same thing here with the destruction of the Jewish temple. So these are such significant events that it would appear in religious literature, which would be the Gospels and the Epistles of Paul, so at least somewhere. And it's mentioned 0 places, not even alluded to.
Eric, just to piggyback on that, the Lucan authorship, in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 18, the Apostle Paul actually quotes from a verse that's only found in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 10, verse 7, where he says,
Right.
The worker is worthy of his wages. Okay, so it had to have been a written text in which he copied from or he recited from, which would, and 1 Timothy was written, 64 AD? So you would assume the book of Acts was the second volume, which would put Luke early in the 50s or mid 50s. And if he used Mark as a source, then Mark is even earlier than that.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. And that was the point that I was making with Mark, is because Luke does draw from Mark in a couple of places. Okay.
Paul also Paul also refers to Paul also refers to the Gospels as well in some of his writings as well. That's
Who did you say, Dominic? I didn't hear you.
Paul also refers to the actual Gospels as well. There's sometimes Paul actually references Jesus, some of Jesus' words as well. Because the other interesting thing with the manuscripts is that some of the actual early manuscripts, it's not just one book. You have, say, one codex, you have one maybe like Ephesians on one side, and maybe Colossians on the other side. So that work is done by Dr. Michael Kruger, where he goes in for early canon and actually states, okay, they were actually putting the books, some of the like Paul's letters together right early on, actually in the actual early manuscripts.
Do you have? Thank you, Dominic. It's embarrassment of riches. Do you have a link for that guy's book that you can post in chat?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'll go ahead and I'll post it from there into the chat for the other 2 pages. Okay, we got to get moving. We could have done a whole show on the reliability of the Bible. Come to think about it, but I want to get to the unreliability of the Quran, and I want to get to this palimpsest, the Sana manuscript. Okay, so the 5 problems that I see with the Quran, and some of these overlap one another, but it's anachronistic. Number 2, it's historically unreliable. Number 3, it's internally contradictory. Number 4, it's scientifically, the sun settles in the pool of muddy water, stars are it's scientifically incoherent. And then lastly, and I'm going to touch on that, the text does not match archaeologically. I want to just start with the problems with where we get information about the Quran. Because when we look at the Quran itself, Mecca is mentioned just one time. Muhammad is mentioned just once or twice, if I'm mistaken. So we don't get a lot of information about the background, the archaeology, all of these things that are important to a text. And we get that from different places, different people. When we look at where Mecca and Medina is on a map, you can see right there that they're in 126-degree weather 3 months out. It's too hot there. Okay, so when we look at the writers of these, you look at Baghdad, 1,800 miles north. Ibn Hisham was in Basra, which is in southeastern Iraq. That's 1,800 kilometers away. You look at, and then plus he grew up in Cairo. This is Jay Smith's slide, by the way. And then Cairo is 1,600 kilometers away. Basra is 1,800 kilometers away. Bukhari is from Bukhara. Now look how far this is. Folks, this is 4,200 kilometers. That's what, 2,400 miles, 2,400 miles. That is a long, long, long way, far away. And that's 250 years after the fact. You look at Tabari, who's one of the people who wrote commentary on the Quran and the history of it, the Takrith. Where is that? That is in Tabaristan, and that is 2,800 kilometers away. So the conclusion that you can look at is that these people, some of the most influential and most important writers of the Quran and are people who commented on it, Hadith, the biography of Muhammad, and the history and commentary, they're living hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles away, living centuries after the events from which they are commenting on. Compare that to the Gospels. Yeah, there is no comparison. Now let's compare the Bible and the Quran here. Just juxtapose one next to the other. In the Quran, you have 65 geographical references. The majority of the references are, hold on, I got them bookmarked here. Let's see here. A place called Ad is mentioned 23 times. A place called Talmud is mentioned 24 times. So that is over 2/3 of the geographical references, just those 2 places. Midian, 7 times. Medina is mentioned twice. The Valley of Mecca is mentioned once. The Valley of Becca is mentioned once. Tuba, mentioned twice. Al-Rash, I never heard of that. That's not important. But anyway, that's mentioned twice. And Hij is mentioned once. And if you look at the Gospel of Luke, you got 110. Just in one Gospel alone, you have 110 separate references, geographical references. And I know it's kind of unfair because Luke, who was it before? George was saying how methodical Luke was in his description of certain events, places, and things of that nature. It's kind of unfair to compare Luke to the Quran, but Luke is just a fraction in length compared to what the Quran is. As a matter of fact, there's a chart in here where we look at the Gospel of Luke has 27,090 words, where the Quran has 149,450. So there you go. And this one talks about words per geographical mention, 246 for the Gospel of Luke. Words per geographical mention for the Quran, 2,299. Yeah, that's incredible. The Quran, 9 places are named. In the Gospel of Luke, 31 places are named, specific places. You look at the Quran is describing what Dan Gibson in his book, Quranic Geography, he goes through and he describes what is written in the Quran that only matches what is 600 miles north, not in Mecca. Whereas in the Bible, they're right where they're supposed to belong. So you have all these places in the Quran that are in the wrong places, and in the Bible, they're all in the right places. Now let's talk about anachronisms in the Quran. Did anybody have anything to add to that or add to this slide here? Anybody? If you don't, that's fine. I didn't know if you wanted to make a comment on that.
Wasn't because the modern Quran is the Hafs Quran, and that didn't it come from Baghdad, or was it Baghdad or Iraq? And that is actually not related to Mecca or Medina at all. So
you said the Hafs?
The Hafs is it's the 1920
right.
edition,
Mm-hmm.
and that's actually not related to actual Mecca or Medina at all.
I'm not sure where it originated from. Maybe somebody wants to type that in the chat or come up and let us know where that originated from.
Because there's 6 early manuscripts of the Quran, and none of them are Uthmanic, which means that none of them actually even date close to the time of Uthman. So it's like, you've got massive like time periods, and I think there's over 100 different Qurans, and there's which kind of defeats the object of one perfect Quran. It's like there's so much problems with the Quran. It's like you just can't deal with all the errors that are actually littered through. No.
Yeah,
go ahead.
There's something I wanted to get some feedback on. I read somewhere that said that the best archaeological evidence that we have for Mecca is that this was a pagan shrine that existed somewhere in Yemen, and there was a massive flood in this area, not related to the biblical flood, but there's a massive flood one year, and the place was flooded out, and because of that, the pagans moved it to what we now call Mecca today. So I wondered if anybody had any more information on that.
Because because I know that, I think it was at Sneakers Corner, they were stating that there was about 3 different sites for Mecca. Because he was stating that in the area of Petra, there's a square area which kind of fits the size of the actual original like Kaaba, but there's like a map before that actually shows Mecca Is it because they didn't know this original site of Haran? So there's like a so they actually show Mecca not so with the Hijaz region, it's like not even on. It's like somewhere down here, like in a completely unknown region. So the area of Petra is kind of shown in the middle, and then there's like because it's like no one really knows, does Mecca and that actually match up? Is there so there's actual massive problems, even finding the actual location of Mecca, let alone kind of so yeah, there's just problematic all around. Oops. Oh. Where's my sound gone? Where's my sound gone?
Eric, you're muted, dude.
I am muted, aren't I? Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. So I got a drink of water, and I didn't want people to listen to that go. Okay. Frank Hahn sent me this.
That's a picture
of the different Qurans that.
Those are the main 7 ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then Steve went to a friend.
Steve. Yeah, look at Steve there.
Steve went to a friend, and he is just awesome. Okay, that last picture, go back.
Okay.
That it shows Luke. Whoa.
This one?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Zoom in where Jesus speaks, and he pretty much tells you. And then the Lord just showed me this just about like 3-4 days ago. I made this picture like about a year ago. But if you can zoom in where he starts, where Jesus starts talking, he pretty much culminates the scriptures, meaning the Holy Script, the Hebrew scriptures, saying that it points to him. It's verifying who he is, what he did, and what he will be doing, or what he did. Excuse me, because this is after his resurrection.
Okay, this is not helping me. Hold on, let me try something else here.
Control plus.
Control what?
Yes. Control and then the key plus, and it'll zoom in. Control, press the key Control, and then the plus, which is like number 12 or 13 or whatever.
Okay, plus. Control.
Control and keep it down. Control and then use the plus sign. Not on the key, not on the numbers key, but it's like number 9 or something.
It's not working.
Can you not read that?
Well, I could. Yeah, let me just go ahead and read it. And
yeah, just read it.
Them, yeah, and he said unto them, "These are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all the things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me. Then opened he their understanding that they might understand the scriptures. And he said to them, Thus it is written, and thus it is behooved Christ to suffer and to rise from the dead the 3rd day, and that repentance and remission of sins should be preached in his name among all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. And ye are witnesses of these things. And behold, I send the promises of my Father upon you, but tarry ye in the city of Jerusalem until ye be endued with power from on high." That's
okay.
The end of what
see where it says 45.
Yep.
Go back where. Okay. Then open he their understanding that they might understand the scriptures. So he's actually given us a culmination of the scriptures, and said unto them, Thus it is written in the scriptures, and thus it behooved Christ to suffer and to rise from the dead the 3rd day. So he actually gave us a culmination of the Hebrew scriptures. So when you said, yeah, we can prove it that none of the scriptures have been changed, and it stays with the same doctrine, okay, because God says doctrine in Moses 35, Deuteronomy 35. So the doctrine has not changed. And so it's like Jesus is culminating the doctrine of the Hebrew scriptures to be about Christ, that it behooved him to suffer and to die and to be raised again the third day, and etc.
And that was doubling down on what we should have did that when we were doing the reliability of the Bible. Sorry about that, but I wanted to. I was going through those pictures that you'd sent me, and I saw the one we were talking about. Dominic was talking about the Hafs Quran. I remember seeing that picture that you had sent. Okay, so let's look at the unreliability of the Quran. Now, there's so many things here that I could go through that I'm just simply not going to have time. But one thing that I want to point out is anachronisms. Now, if you don't know what an anachronism is, that's okay. An anachronism is an object or a person or an event not happening or not existing at the time that the overall passage is commenting upon. The easiest example of this would be describing the Pilgrims coming from England on the Mayflower. And the reason why they landed at Plymouth up in Massachusetts instead of down in New York is because the winter storms that they were sailing in, or the late fall storms that they were sailing in, blew them off course. Now, they could have easily found their way if their GPS had been fully charged, but since it wasn't, they landed in Plymouth. Now, the anachronism in that story, of course, is the GPS. GPS did not exist at the time of the Pilgrims. So you would automatically know that there's something wrong with that story if I would include GPS in that system or in that story. That's what an anachronism is. And when we look at the Quran, it is full of them. When we look when you look at Joseph is sold for dirhams. A dirham is a Greek coin. Now, number one, coins did not even exist at the time of Joseph. That's about 300 years after Joseph was sold into slavery. About 1400 BC is when they start talking about coins. But the dirham did not come into existence until 600 BC. So this one is off by at least 600 years. Second, crucifixion occurring in the court of Pharaoh at the time of Joseph and at the time of Moses. Problem, anachronism, is that Persians developed crucifixion 600 BC. So Muhammad is only off here by a millennia, 1,000 years.
Yeah, only.
David wearing chainmail. Chainmail was not developed until, was it the 6th century BC? By the Celts in England. So he's not only a continent away, he's also 900 years off. You look at Samaritan. This is so silly. A Samaritan is helping Aaron build the golden calf at Mount Sinai. Yep. This is only 700 years off because Samaria did not become a distinct part of Israel until the northern kingdom had been carried off by the Assyrians in 721 BC. So he's only off by 700 years. The furthest mosque Muhammad traveled to on his little winged pony was not built until 691. This is 60 years after his death. And that's if you're talking about the Dome of the Rock being that mosque, that's 691. If you're talking about the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that wasn't built until 705, which is another, 14 years on top of that?
Yep.
That's an anachronism. So how can he go to the furthest mosque if that is supposed to be the mosque, because it really doesn't define it? How can he go to there if it doesn't exist? Exactly, he can't. Aaron and Mo, and this is my favorite because Aaron and Moses are the brothers of the mother of Jesus, and the one passage that they always like to go, oh, well, it's in chapter 19 and chapter 20 and chapter 66, or it's just used as an allusion to Mary being relationally related to Moses and Aaron. Well, there's all kinds of problems with that. Number one, Mary is not from the tribe of Levi. Moses and Aaron are from the tribe of Levi. Mary was from the tribe of Judah. That's number one. Number two, when you look at chapter 3, verses 33 through 45, there is no connection there. Imram's the father. He has a wife. There's no space between 1400 BC and the first century where Mary is living that you can find in there. There's nothing there. Muhammad was a historical illiterate. And then you have Hammam from the book of Esther. He's interacting with Pharaoh and Moses in chapter 28 of the Quran. And this is only 900 years off. So when we look at all the anachronisms that we have in the Quran, we can clearly see that there's no way, zero way that this can be from Allah. If it is from Allah, that Allah is he's a special education God or some type, because there's just no way that this can be true. Does anybody have any comments on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, since they tell them just verbally, and I just learned this from Daughter of Christ speaking with Alpha D the other day, they tell them to do not read the Bible. Okay, even though the Quran confirms it, they say, don't read it, it's been corrupt and everything. So then, hence, if you only have the Quran and you can't read anything else of Allah's previous revelations, then you do stay very, very, respectfully saying, ignorant. But when they start reaching out, because the more that they told her that she could not read, she wanted to read it to see what it had to say. Why are they trying to keep me from the Bible, which is Allah's first revelations? It comes down to, the heart that God has made all of us. Islam can't overcome it. Even the human heart, I say human, even the mankind's heart. Because people, little children like Adam, he was a child that asked a lot of questions. And Islam can't overcome that because it's just lies. That's all I wanted to say.
And one of the main problems with what you just said is when people are exposed to what the Bible does teach, when they are exposed to the problems, when you just look at the anachronisms that you find in the Quran, when they're exposed to this, and they go and they actually do some honest research of this, and they stay away from what's that web, Islamic Awareness, which is, or what's the other one, something Muslim, ask a Muslim, there we go, ask a Muslim.
Yes, ask a Muslim.
When they they stay away from those websites and they actually start finding impartial and what people would consider acceptable scholarship, Islam loses every time. So this is why you have an apostasy rate amongst the young people here in the West of almost a third of them apostatizing from Islam. Why? Because they have this access to this information, whereas in other countries, Islamic dominated countries, they do not allow this. Because if any type of criticism of Muhammad, any type of criticism of the Quran is considered apostasy, and they throw you in jail for apostasy. So if you start bringing up anachronisms, you'd probably be dead. All right. Let's see here. Okay, archaeology. This is one of the things that I wanted to point out, because this comes right out of Dan Gibson's book, Quranic Geography. This is really interesting. Some of the things that he brings up here. When you look at how the Quran describes Mecca, it describes Mecca as the mother of all cities. Here's the problem. There is no archaeological evidence for Mecca prior to the 7th century. Let me just say that one more time so we all understand this. At the time that Muhammad lived, we cannot find any type of evidence that the city, Mecca, existed. Now, we can find evidence that exists later, of course, but at that time, there's nothing. There's not a map. There's no inscriptions. There's nothing that mentions that Mecca even existed at that time. Yeah, okay, so it's missing on all early maps. Mecca is in a valley. or actually, Rad corrected me on this today. I thought it was on a plateau, but it's in a wadi, according to Rad. Rad, if you want to come up on mic and correct me on that, you go on ahead. I did take the picture out of the slideshow.
Yeah, actually, I did want to comment on some other things that you said. Untruthisms that you're saying, just total falsehood, lies against Islam and the Prophet Muhammad, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I actually got into an argument or discussion a while ago with a Muslim when I brought up this very point that you're bringing up, that there is no archaeological evidence, there's no mention historically of a place called Mecca in Saudi Arabia. Well, he brought up, and it's true, there was some Greek historian. I don't know if he was BC writing or a few hundred years AD writing. I think it was BC. You know what I mean? He was writing 100 years before Christ kind of thing. And he writes, his history of the Arabic people or something like that, or he mentions them, and he mentions that the Arabs had a sanctuary where they would go and pray. And he said, see, this is proof that Mecca, because Mecca is that sanctuary. It's known as the noble sanctuary. Well, no, here's the thing with this, okay? The position of Mecca is in a wadi, okay, which is a floodplain, okay? And being in the desert, okay, a floodplain is like, a half an inch of water, in a couple hours. Forget it, it's flooded, okay? But it's in a floodplain. Now, Arabs were notorious for this. There is plenty of documentation on this. Even Islamic sources say that this is what the Arabs did before Muhammad in the time of ignorance. They would go out and raid each other. Okay, these Arabic tribes would go out to another tribe, steal their crap, okay, and then go back. These were like, Native Americans back in the day. This is what they did, okay? They had scarce resources living out in the desert, so they pillaged and plundered for whatever they could get. Well, normally this would work out where, people get beat up and insulted, whatever, but nobody would really kind of get killed. That's why you have when Muhammad drew first blood, or when Muhammad's Muslims drew first blood. That's why that was such a big deal. Okay, if you recall this, because it was always like, what? You did what? Even Muhammad was aghast by this, but Muhammad said, "We're still keeping the booty and the prisoners." You know what I mean? He didn't give back the loot, but he was like, "No, I have nothing to do with this." Whatever. Right. Anyway, point being is this: so whenever it got too far, okay, these Arab tribes, okay, they would get together with a shaman, okay, a holy man, and they would put up a Kaaba. And it is usually in a wadi because it was not supposed to be permanent. That's why they did this specifically in the floodplain, because it was not supposed to be permanent. So these tribes would go and meet, and they would build a little stone structure, and they would powwow, and they would work it out, okay, through the advice and the overseeing of this holy man, regional holy man. Okay, this is well documented, okay, through pre-Islamic Arabic history. Okay. As a matter of fact, archaeological evidence shows that there are all these kind of Kaabas kind of scattered all over Saudi Arabia in these wadis. Okay. The ancient ruins of these things. Okay. Because, well, the Kaaba itself was just unhewn stone that they piled up and put together. Mm-hmm. It didn't even have a roof. Okay. Right. And this is Allah's grand house. And you compare that to the temple, where only the finest gold, the finest cedar, the finest workers, okay, the finest jewels, the finest of everything.
Well, if you look at the time of the Exodus, at least, they kept the Ark of the Covenant in a tent. Mm-hmm. Or they had like a procession or something leading up into it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there was some kind of covering. You know what I mean?
Right.
But anyway, point being is this. Okay, so if a Muslim ever brings this up, I forgot the Greek historian's name, but he did write something about the Arabic people. So you might come in contact with this, where he writes about a sanctuary, okay, that the Arabs would go and worship at. It's not talking about Mecca. It's talking about any sanctuary, anything that they would set up specifically for the powwow, specifically to settle disputes, because the Arabs were pillaging and plundering each other. And when things got really way too hot, they would have this powwow. Okay. And these ruins, you can go look it up on Google. I don't know. No, you can go find it. You can go find images of these, ancient ruins. Okay, of these.
It's not, is this from
Kabas.
from Ptolemy or Archimedes or?
I think his name starts with a P, if I'm not mistaken.
That's Ptolemy. Yeah,
It's Ptolemy. Yeah,
the P is silent. It's E-T.
kind of like the S in Illinois. Yeah, so.
Yeah, Illinois. Yeah, we're all moving to join red in Illinois.
Yeah, Illinois.
Okay, all right. So let's get to number 4 here. Grass and Mecca. If you look at Ibn Ishaq on page 105, and as a matter of fact, I did because I have Ibn Ishaq right here. I'm sorry, I didn't share my screen. Okay, bad host. Okay, so is there grass in Mecca? Well, if you look in Ibn Ishaq, it describes grass. And if you look in Sahih Bukhari, book 9, number 337, it describes grass in Mecca. If you look in Al-Tabari, who gives the history and the Tasfir, it talks about clay and loam, which is like tillable dirt, exists there. It tells the story of, I think it was Muhammad's dad or somebody getting this type of dirt on his hand. Somebody can correct me in chat if you want to on that. I can't remember exactly where that comes from. It has trees, and we find this in Ibn Ishaq on page 46, and I looked it up, and they're right there on page 46. Trees. It says that it has grapes, which would mean it would have vineyards, and we find this in Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 4, number 281. So when we look at Mecca today, this is a picture of right outside of Mecca. Trees, tillable soil, grapes or grass. This is Mecca, right outside of Mecca. Do we see tillable soil, trees, grapes, grass, anything? Here's kind of a view from a surrounding mountain. Do we see any trees? Here, whoa, look at down here. There's some trees somebody planted. I wonder how they got the water for them. But I don't see any trees growing wild. I don't see grapes growing out of that rock there. I don't see how that could happen. If you ever flown in a plane over the American Southwest and you're flying at, let's say, 40,000 feet, you can, when you look down, you can see where they're doing agriculture in West Texas and New Mexico. And the reason why is you have brown, and then you have some green, brown, and then there's circles because that's how they have the irrigation hoses set up around that thing that goes around that sprays the water on what they're growing. Here, this is right above Mecca. I don't see anything growing around Mecca. There's no similarities here at all. And this is what Mecca looks like today. If you look at the Kaaba, which is that little dot right there in the center, I don't see if you can see that. Sure, you can see that. As a matter of fact, let me make that even bigger. There you go. You can see the Kaaba right there, and then you got these high-rise hotels for the pious ones that go to do their Hajj. And they have some additional construction going on over here. I don't know what they're building right there, but it doesn't matter. But I don't see any trees. I don't see any grapes. I don't see any grass. I don't see anything that would resemble what we find in these other sources describing Islam. Now, this is the Valley of Mecca. Now, I know a lot of you are going, wait a second. I see some trees. If you consider scrub brush trees, okay, maybe you could say, okay, trees. I don't know if you could grow grapes. Okay. But the problem with this Valley of Mecca is this one is in Sedona, Arizona. So when I was looking up for the Valley of Mecca, this popped up. And I said, well, wait a second. That looks like it has some trees in it. But it was in Arizona. It's not in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so when we start looking at what the unreliability of the Quran, and we look at the unreliability of the story that surrounds the Quran, if you don't have this book yet, I highly recommend it. You can't see it. I'm sorry. I would highly recommend it. It's Dan Gibson's Quranic Geography. It's $25, $30. I can't remember how much it costs, but if you want to invest in a book that eviscerates the historicity of the Quran, the archaeological or topography of the Quran. That book right there does it, and it does a really good job. Does anybody have anything to add to any of that we were discussing? Because we're going to move into the Sana manuscript here in just a second. Anybody? Am I on mute? Is anybody there? I don't hear anybody. Is everybody else muted?
No, we hear
Well,
you.
Okay, there's one. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, sorry. All right. I thought maybe everybody ran away and that was it. Okay. Yes. Oh, you saw olive trees. Kufar Phobia says, I saw olive trees. Sure you saw olive trees. Oh, that's funny. Okay. When we look at this
Wait. I was out for a smoke break. I do have to comment on this really quickly here. Okay, so you silly kafir. Don't you understand that this is a Quranic miracle because it proves global warming? You see, back then, okay, the climate was very much different in the Arabian desert. It was a paradise, okay? But through the use of the kafir and people not practicing Islam correctly, because they never do for some reason. Have you ever noticed that? It's always... Seriously, they will tell you that the Taliban failed because they were not Islamic enough. Then they will tell you ISIS failed because they were not Islamic enough. Seriously, it is like Jesus casting out the demons and saying, yeah, when you cast out the one demon, he goes back after the house is swept clean and gets 7 of his best friends that are even worse than he is. Okay? But no, seriously, it's because of global warming. See that, people? This is proof of global warming, you silly kafir.
And this, that was that's one of the arguments that I hear when we start arguing about, how could Muhammad, possibly when he's 54 years old, marry Aisha or consummate this marriage when she's 9 years old. And the argument always goes, well, girls matured faster in Arabia at this time than they do now, when there's absolutely no proof of this. And we all know that maturity, a human body matures, is tied in a lot of ways, not all the time, but in a lot of ways, to diet. And we know that the diet in 7th century Arabia was not anything close to what it is today. So to make this argument is actually
right.
Scientific. Yeah, it's stupid.
They weren't eating Wonder Bread or drinking tap water laced with estrogen. No, seriously, if you go do a study of your tap water, because people dump out birth control pills.
Well, well, you never know what's coming out of that miracle.
Oh yeah, well, you got to remind me, we got a new commercial coming up. We got
okay, save that for save it for Tuesday.
Radical. I thought it was camel urine and flies.
Dude.
They had this special smoothie at the time. It was like a kind of
exactly.
Dominic, I hate to say this, but I was waiting for Robert to mention something about the camel urine being part of the diet.
But I gotta tell you a funny story. This is no joke. Okay, I was in a Peloton room years ago where this woman who was a Muslim, she kept saying, "In my profession as a medical practitioner," I don't know what she did, but she definitely wasn't a medical doctor. But somehow it was on the a female circumcision or female genital mutilation, and she was talking about, in my experience, the clitoris of a woman from Arabia is larger than a woman in the gold, so therefore they have to shave it off. I'm serious. That's the word she used. Shave it down. I'm like, what, are you going to take a grate? Are you going to take a cheese grater? What the hell are you doing? But no, this is their dementia, man. It's like, are you serious?
Who would think of something like that? I mean, who do? See, I don't. To be honest, I don't want to know. I
wanted to do a scientific inquiry, and I told all these Muslim Arab women, send me a picture of their vajayjay, okay, so we can measure, okay, and we can see. But none of them took me up on it. I don't know why. It was all in the name of science, strictly science. But no, true story. It really happened.
That is so wrong.
It's the devil's torment. It's just literally torment, dehumanate, just.
Okay.
Nobody's cutting off the tip of my penis. I don't care how.
Okay, let's move on to this next subject here. I I want to move on. Okay, what we
But
have
it's
here.
foreskin on you, and women don't have foreskin.
That's yes, and that's
You know, so
and
yeah.
when we did a I think
Still not doing it. Still not doing it.
no. I think we had Hatun Tosh on the Tuesday night show last fall, and that topic was, and she brought up that topic because there were so many people that she knows that were Muslims, ex-Muslims, that had gone through that process.
Forced. They were forced through that process.
These are women. These are women, Eric.
Say that again.
These are women who went through this process.
No,
Yeah.
they're most likely little girls at that time.
Oh, young girls.
Yeah, Hatun knew these people. She mentioned this because she was. We had Kenny Bomer on that night trying to call her out, and she just. And I actually, if there was ever a time where I felt sorry for Kenny, I mean, he just got schooled so bad that night. It was.
Can you send us that link?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
I like that as well.
Don't send it through the chat here because I get kicked off when I get out of that chat.
It was.
Kenny went back to his naughty corner. Did he go back to his naughty
It was embarrassing. Okay, let's move on. We only got 45 minutes here, and I got to go through the Sana manuscript. Okay, what I have up on the screen is a screenshot from the esteemed scholarly, peer-reviewed website of Islamic Awareness. And what they have here, you can't see it because it's so small. But what these are dates, carbon 14 dates of manuscripts, old Islamic manuscripts, and when they are dated. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these different folios or all of these different manuscripts, but what I want to do is I want to focus on the Sana manuscript because this is the one that we're talking about today. Now, the Sana manuscript is a manuscript that was, oh boy, I just messed up here. Sorry about that. Is a manuscript that, I don't know if I can enlarge this. Can I enlarge this at all?
Yeah.
On Microsoft, on PowerPoint. How do you make it bigger on PowerPoint?
Oh, PowerPoint. I don't know, sir.
How do I
There should
zoom
be-
in?
You,
Zoom in. Here we go.
wait,
Right. Yeah, where it says zoom in. Okay. So when we look here, this is Codex Sana, and you had different labs do tests on this. You had one in Arizona, the AMS, Accelerated Mass Spectrometry is what carbon-14 dating is called. One in Switzerland, one in the UK, one in Germany, and then one in Lyon, France. And if you look at the dates for these, the carbon dates on these things, I'm going to focus on the second one here. Let's see. Like, I don't think I can get this to come up, but here, if you look here, this is the date down here, 388 to 535. Now, when we think of carbon dating, if you don't know how carbon dating works, it's really not that hard to understand because carbon 14 is a unstable isotope. I taught science for a couple of years, so I had to understand how these dating systems work. And as the ultraviolet light enters the Earth's atmosphere, it strikes carbon 12, and it adds an isotope to it. So it becomes carbon 14. That carbon 14 decays at a certain rate, 5,730 years. You get what we call a half-life. So half of the carbon 14 will decay at 5,730 years, and another 5,730 years, the other half. So let's say you start off with 800 isotopes, then you go down to 400 isotopes after 5,730 years, then you go down to 200 isotopes after 5,730 years, then you go down to 50 isotopes, 25, et cetera, until you have no more carbon-14 and something is considered carbon-14 dead. Well, when you measure this, you can get a ratio between the C12 and the C14, and that's how they measure the age of these things, because you will know that there can only be so much carbon-14 in there based with the existence of what they call the daughter element. So they come up with 388 years or 388 to 535 for this sample alone on the Sana. This is a full century before the death of Muhammad, before the Quran could ever have been penned. You come up here, now keep in mind, these are date ranges. The date ranges are very seldom correlate to the beginning date or the ending date. So if we were to go 388 to 535, we could probably say about 450 would be a good solid date for that sample. If you go up to this next one right here, where it says 433 to 599, okay, so that's 600, 433, so you could say maybe 525 for that date of that sample. This one, 543 to 643, well, that puts us close to when it was actually, so the Quran was supposed to actually have been penned, which was in 651 by Uthman, but it's not even within that date range. Then you get up here to this one, which was, where was this? This is from Oxford, Germany. This doesn't even get you close to where it needs to be, and so on and so forth for all the other ones, with the exception of maybe this one up here in Arizona. That you might be able to get close to being radiocarbon dated. This is a huge problem, and they won't admit it, because when we look at this palimpsest, and this is what I'm going to do here. Let me. How do I unzoom it? There we go. When we look at the Sana manuscripts, it's a palimpsest. It means that there was a script that was initially written on these animal skins that was washed off, and then they wrote over them. So what is underneath them can be dated to a century or so prior to Muhammad. And it looks as if that they wrote on top of that script something different. So when we look here, it says here, I don't know which, this is, what is that? Chapter 2, verse 222. So keep away from wives during menstruation and don't approach them until they are pure. But in the palimpsest underneath, I believe this is the palimpsest, the lower text says, so do not go near your wives during menstruation until they are pure and when they have purified themselves. So keep away from, so don't go near, so keep away from your wives. So this is a minor difference, but it is different. So when we say perfect preservation of the Quran, not so much. Let's go for another example.
Yep.
Go ahead. Did you want to say something?
Yep, not so much. That's right.
Okay. Yep. Zoom in here. Let's see here. Do not shave your heads, whoever among you, charity. And what does it say over here? So if one of you has an ailment of the head, it doesn't say make shaving. Now notice it says make shaving necessary. It does. If it's in the parentheses, that means it's been added. So this has been added as far as shaving the head. A ransom over here, what does it say? It's a charity. It's different. So you have a difference between the upper text and the lower text. Chapter 9, verse 80.
And that's a huge difference. Charity versus ransom.
Right. So they must offer a ransom. So down before, or in the standard text today, it says that it's a charity or a sacrifice, where before it's a ransom. Yeah, big difference. Okay, and I've asked people before, and I'm willing to be wrong on this, but I've been trying to find if some of these texts, if some of these variants that we find in between these, or between the Qurans that exist today and in this palimpsest, do they affect in any way any major teaching of the Quran? And I would say no. Other than the teaching that it has been perfectly preserved. And for a lot of people, that tenet of Islam, that the Quran has been perfectly preserved, has, when after this thing last spring with Yasser Qadi and Muhammad, Allah praise for hijab, before that interview and the holes in the narrative thing came out, that's basically blown the lid off of this. But they've known about this palimpsest here for quite a while. Let's see here. Let's look at the standard text today. let's see, where is my Zoom? There we are. The standard text today, it says, let's see, if you should ask forgiveness for them 70 times, never will Allah forgive them. That is because they disbelieved in Allah and his messenger. Well, what does it say before? If you should ask forgiveness for them 70 times, Allah will not forgive them. Why? Well, it doesn't say because they disbelieved in Allah. Well, they did not, because they did not believe in Allah, but they've added and his messenger. Gee whiz.
Wait. So they added a whole bunch of text.
Yeah, this is what it originally said. Allah will not forgive them. If you should ask forgiveness for them 70 times, and I believe this is when they're talking about people who Jolly, no, it's not the Jolly. What's it called? Where you the period of ignorance. What is this called? What's that called?
This is from Surah Toba, whatever. This is Surah 9. So this is the war surah. So this is where they're going out, and this no. So this is anyone. This is pretty much anyone at this point in time of the Arabic tribes. This is pretty much a genocide order right here. Okay. Either way, whichever one in the context, this is to commit genocide, because it is saying very clearly, whichever version you go by, it is saying very clearly that Allah is not going to forgive them. And with the other verses of fight them, slay them, kill them where you find, you know what I mean? This is like the Wesen Conference in Nazi Germany. This is where they're spelling out, okay, what we've got to do to these pagan tribes and these Jews and these Christians living in Arabia. This is the call to genocide, okay? Because look at this. Well, there's another thing with this, and I know you're going on the textual variations here, but either way, look at this. Allah does not guide the defiantly disobedient people, right? Okay? What kind of God is this? Okay, he cannot guide people. He can only guide people who obey him. He cannot guide people who are in disobedience to obedience. You see what I'm saying? So you've already got to be obedient to God for him to guide you. And if you are disobedient to God, he is powerless. Okay, to guide you into obedience. And I just thought I wanted to bring that up. But yeah, either way. Somebody added something to this text along the line, so yeah, it's not.
Well, it's obvious what they've added. Okay, I'm trying to mute. Say you got to unmute your. Yeah. Just if you're going to come up a mic, that's fine. But keep yourself muted because we're listening to your radio station in the background. It's good music, but a little too loud. Okay, so here is that, and it's just basically telling us they're adding to it. Is it? Hold on a second. Let me pull out Reliance of the Traveler here. Are they not supposed to add to their word? Would this be considered apostasy? I'm almost certain it would. I'm not going to look it up. Let's see. To revile, to deny any verse of the Quran, to prostrate to an idol, to speak words that imply unbelief, to revile Allah is the messenger. It's in here someplace where if you add to the Quran or disbelieve that something is supposed to exist in there, it's considered apostasy. So, yeah, they're committing apostasy by doing this. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Does anybody have anything else that they want to add to this here? I see Mr. Adam showed up. Thank you for coming, sir.
Hey, Adam.
Okay. All right. We're still in chapter 9 here. Okay. So let's look at, zoom in. Okay. Here's what it says now. It says the mosque of Allah are only to be maintained by those who believe in Allah in the last day and establish prayer and give zakat and do not fear Allah. For it is expected that those will be of the guided, not rightly guided, but the guided. Okay. That's what it says today.
Do not fear except Allah.
Yeah, except Allah. Do not fear. Okay, so we come over here, and it says the mosque of Allah are only to be maintained by those who believe in Allah in the last day and do jihad in the name of. Wait a second.
Yep.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Something. yeah, something is not matching up here. So
Yeah.
before they said maybe these guys were a bunch of sissies and didn't want to go out and do jihad or something. Is what
So Eric, the one on the left is which manuscript, and the one on the right is what manuscript?
they're both from the Sana manuscript. The Sana manuscript is what we call a palimpsest. And a palimpsest, because back in the day, it was, material to write on was very expensive. So if you got animal skins, you would want to, and they lasted a long time. You would want to, if you had an old animal skin, you could wipe off what was written on there, wash it off, and then write over the top of it. And this is what they've done with the Sana manuscript. They have taken a manuscript, which, oh, by the way, I just showed you, according to radiocarbon dates using accelerated mass spectrometry, radiocarbon 14 dating. They've dated this Hamajama clear back to 388. A century. They've dated it to 2 centuries before Muhammad, and this causes a lot of problems. And the problem that I see is that this was something that pre-existed Muhammad and was used as some form of text and superimposed, redacted back on Muhammad later on. That's just me thinking based on what I can see from this. Now, I'm going to, there's all going to be all kinds of people that
Eric, the one on the left is the superior text, and the one on the right is the underlying
correct.
Text.
The one on the right is this one over here is the one that was washed off.
Okay.
This is the one that they had put on. So the left, or they had written over the top of it.
Yeah.
So here, this is what it originally said, and do jihad in the name of Allah. And then you got a bunch of pacifists saying, oh, no, we don't want to do that. We'll just pray and give zakat. So they changed it. And of the successful to of the guided. So it's the last part's just a minor change, but that other one, that's kind of I don't know. To me, that's kind of a significant change.
Okay, so the next question I have to ask you then, which will naturally occur in someone's mind. So are you saying that the entire Quran preceded Muhammad? If that's the case, does it mean that Muhammad didn't exist? Or, well, his name is mentioned in the Quran, so are you saying that some parts were filled in later? What exactly is the point?
Well, people can draw their conclusions based on the evidence that is in front of us and that I've looked at today. Mecca does not exist in the 7th century. So if Mecca does not exist, the Muhammad that is described in the Hadith, that is described in the Sirah, that is described in the commentary, does not exist in Mecca at that time.
Right.
You can't prove Mecca existed.
Yep.
And on top
And
of that,
doesn't it say Becca? Doesn't it say in the Quran Becca, and they change it? Oh, well, that means Mecca.
I'm not sure.
There are two words.
Okay.
You're talking about they'll take the Bible verse where it talks about Becca or the Valley of Becca.
Yeah, they're doing that.
Which is pretty much anywhere in like the desert. Okay, it's like a vast swath of land. Has nothing to do with Mecca, but that's what they're talking about. They say, well, it used to be, it sounds like Mecca, so therefore, yes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, Adam.
Yes, I described that one of the verse actually says Makkah, the other verse says Bakka. So there are two mentions, two different verses. One of them actually says Makkah, the other one says Bakka.
Adam, I do have a question. Okay, so when we look at those two words, and I can't remember where I saw this, so correct me if I'm wrong. If you have Becca and you have Mecca, in order to change the word Mecca or the word, I'm sorry, Becca to Mecca, can you change that first letter by just adding like a circle on the end of it or something?
Exactly. You have to change Ba to Ma. And yes, the only for a non-Arabic speaker, it is just one circle that you have to add and connect it to Ba, because earlier there were no dots. So dot was never present over there anyway.
Okay, so if it originally says Becca, and somebody wants to change it to Mecca, all they have to do is just add that additional.
Yes, just the top
onto
seed,
that.
like exactly the way you are moving your finger. Move it again. Yep, that's it, and you have the Makkah from Bakka.
Wow.
The Mecca from Becca.
Wow, that's scary. I thought, wow, that person's just non-Arabic. I can't remember where I saw that from. I was thinking, he's just a non-Arabic speaker. It can't be that simple. But there you go.
I can open my paintbrush and I can show it to you right now if you want.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen. Stop share. Okay, go ahead. Because we can only have 10. And you know what? I went back in to look to see if StreamYard can up the number of different people that can interact. And no, maximum of 10. What kind of crap is that? I mean, Zoom even allows you to have, you can have up to, as a matter of fact, you can have up to 100 people under some Zoom plans.
I contacted them, tried to change it, but they kind of didn't. They still haven't done anything about it. So the thing is, if you manage just to contact them and see if you can get some change kind of here going on.
It's not
need
Stream. It's not Stream Acre. It's Stream Yard. So you can probably only fit about 10 people in a yard.
That's a good one.
If I put the thing on the chat, we could see if we all write like some form of letter or something, or
write our local congressman.
Yeah.
Oh, I was on mute. So guys, can you see my screen?
Okay, I can see your screen, but erase it and start over. Explain to us what you're doing.
And right clearer, Adam. Right clearer, sir.
Again,
That is clearer. That's clear.
Wiggly line.
English, my brother, English.
See how much we love you, Adam? We got to pick on you, buddy.
So that if you do not have dots, that can be read as Bakka. The Bakka would need a dot over here, which in the earlier manuscripts there was none, right? So if you just want to make it as Makkah, you just need to do this. That's it.
Wow.
And that becomes
Wow.
Makkah. So basically this is Ba and this is Ma. But when you connect it with another word, this is Ba and this is Ma. So you see, so what is remaining? The remaining thing is just this. And you have a Makkah out of Bakka. And plus, because people write it in a style, so they write Ba as in this way. So when they write it as in this way, because that's the style of the time, because they like, italics in the English.
Right.
So italics in the Arabic, you can say it's just like that. And then you do it this and becomes Makkah instead of Bakka. And that is why you have one verse in Quran where it is Bakka, the other verse in Quran where it is Makkah, because there were no dots back in those days. None of the early Quran has dots.
Now, when it refers to Becca, the Valley of Becca in the Quran, where is that? Where is it referring to? Is it specific or is it explicit, or it's just kind of like everything else?
It's kind of everything else. I can actually pull up the verse. Hold on, but like it's kind of everything else.
Okay, and that's when we start looking at the geography of all this. And I know we're looking at the palimpsest here, the Sana palimpsest, but when we're looking at the overall idea here, the overall arching idea of the reliability of the Quran, versus the reliability of the Bible. In the Bible, when we look at archaeology and we look at geography and topography, it lines up perfectly. But when you look at the Quran, it's so vague and ambiguous that it can be opened up to all kinds of interpretations and all kinds of games that we see are played out daily when people start doing dawah. Okay, let me go back to you, Adam. I'm sorry.
So now let me show you where it is Makkah and where it is Bakka. Share my screen. And you have this verse where it is Makkah. This meme kaf ta, right? So it says, and it is who withheld men's hand from you and withheld your hand from them in the valley of Makkah, after he had made you victorious over them.
Okay,
So
where's that word? Where's the word Mecca in that? Is that
Mecca
Right.
in English here and Makkah in Arabic here.
Okay, so
You see
where,
me, Ma?
where's that squiggly line? Is that right? You can't
It's
probably
right
can't
there
see
at
my
the
arrow.
end. It looks like right
Adam-
there at the end. Yeah.
The first one. Forget the dots and the dashes on the word. So if look at the first meme.
Can you all see my arrow? My mouse arrow there? No.
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 Okay, I'm okay. Point to that where that.
Okay, so for that I need to let me do that. Okay, hold on. Snipping.
I just want to make sure everybody sees this because this is just absolutely amazing to me.
It's all squiggly lines to me, dude.
So,
It does, but I want to just see where he talks about making that circle on the end of that line to make it change it from a B to an M.
Adam,
Okay, so
it's the word
You,
because
you can't do it. That's fine.
Adam, because with
yes.
with stuff like Hebrew words, you normally have stuff like roots. So what's the actual root word of? Or, so you have like three. You normally have like three letters which make up the root word. For like, is that what's
Okay,
the-
no. It is alphabet. So like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. These
Yes.
are alphabets, right? Just like that, Ba is an alphabet, which actually pronounce as. Oh, come on. So Ba is an alphabet, which actually pronounces as B-A. Ba.
Okay.
So that's an alphabet. Ma or Meme is an alphabet, which actually pronounces as Ma or Meme, M-E-M, depending on how you do that. So these are two basic alphabets: Alif, Ba, Pa, Ta, Sa, Jim, Ha, Dal, and so on and so forth until Meme or Ma. So like these are two different alphabets fully. So now if we see over here, the way this is the word Makkah. So it is written as, let's say in the earlier scripted, it would be written, if I write it in this way, the way they are writing it. So you can actually write it in many different ways. So if I write it the way they are written it, this is how it is, and you have to do what? You just did this. You just did this. There you go. So the Bakka became Makkah. So this is the word. This is the first word that we are talking about.
Because with
Can you see all that?
with the context of the passage, would it change any difference between the context of the passage?
No,
'Cause-
if it is a city, then it will not take any difference, because the Valley of Bakka or Valley of Makkah, it will not change anything, because if you read the English translation as well, the Valley of Makkah. So now if you write it as Valley of Makkah or write it as Valley of Bakka, it will not make any difference. It's just the city name.
No, because the other interesting thing that I was looking at was it says who has withheld men's hands from you, who has withheld what on earth does that mean?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Where it says who hath withheld man's hands from you, and have withheld your hands from them.
Okay, forget that part. Let me show you why they did not change it on the other side, because there changing was difficult. Why it was changing was difficult. I will show you why the changing was difficult over there, because they had at over there. So they had an additional bar. So you will see why the other side was difficult to make. You will see. So here the same word is here.
Did it, Adam? Would
So-
the actual diacritical marks actually make any difference to the actual?
Yeah, they make the difference, but hold on, because early manuscript did not have dots and diacritical marking. That's why I'm telling you. Hold on, just give me a sec. So here they did not change it. Why? Because it had another bar over here. So they had two bars over here. So what is going to happen over here? Because there are two bars, now they have to write it as Baka, right? So now how can they change it? Because if they change it, it should be actually changed as this one. So now the meme, the round thing has to not go on the top, but rather on the bottom, because the first bar is used for at. So here the first bar will be used at. The second bar becomes Bakka. So basically if they change it, so they cannot just do because this will be inconsistent. They can't do that like that. It will not make the sound because this will become a kaf, a kutte wala kaf instead of ma. So it will become another word. So here they couldn't do that because it's two bars, because one bar is lillazi babakka bibakka, lillazi bibakka, at bakka. So basically the word at over here, it is the first bar connecting it with lillazi. So that is why the ba, so that is why it was not possible for them to change it to Makkah, because the meme has to go down rather than above, because if it becomes above, then it will become the different ka, and they just couldn't do it. So you see what I'm saying?
Adam, would it also change, because with the fact of, say, if, because I know that this is like a modern Arabic script, would it change if you kind of moved it to, say an ancient, I can't remember the ancient Arabic script.
I'm writing it the ancient Arabic. So this is
yes,
ancient Arabic. There is no dots, there is no nothing. So this whole thing is here, you will find in the ancient Arabic. Okay, so now see, you can read this in so many different ways. You can read is, if I put two dots over here, one dot over here, it will become tabakka instead of babakka. So it all depends on the dot, how you places the dot.
Because with ta, would that mean like the Mecca?
No, ta is another word in Arabic, which is this, which means ta. It's another alphabet.
Okay.
Ta. So now that's not the problem. We need to see the base skeleton. You know, the base skeleton. What is the base skeleton? So the base skeleton is this. So if I make it like this, it will not make anything, because this is not how Arabic written. So if it has to be written by Makkah, then it should be written like this, right? The circle thing should come down rather than above. Otherwise, this will become this or this. You know, it just depends. So now they couldn't do it. That's what I think. They couldn't do it because it's not writable like this. So that is why they didn't change it over here, because it should be actually written like this to make it be Makkah. Be Makkah. Okay, so B is Zair down over here makes it B. Zabar over here will make it Ba. So B or Ba depending on where the dash is, but that's once again is irrelevant over here for the point. It is B Bakka. Hence, they just couldn't change it. But like when you are just writing Bakka, it's so easy to change it, because then you just have to add this and it becomes Makkah. So they change it on one location. Here, they couldn't do it because it should have been like this instead of like this, you know. So it's not possible. It's this one, any Arabic can read the basic Arabic, not even know what it means. If he reads this, he will know this never is meme. He will know that this is never meme, because the circle is on the top in a middle of two words. So there is one word over here, one letter over here, which is called ba. There is one letter over here, which is called kaf. And in the middle of the two, if you are making a circle above, it can never mean meme. It can never mean meme. So that's my theology behind it.
Okay, I think I've solved the problem. You know, I'm going to remove your screen here,
Okay.
Adam. Hold on just a second.
Adam,
Hold on, Adam. Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. Go ahead, George.
By the way, today I came up to be a Muslim and tell you that Quran is perfectly preserved, which I was doing in the chat, which you never showed, and you moved me in a very different direction.
Well, I got it figured out here, and I looked this up, and this is the rescuing device. I was talking about how sometimes you have dilemmas that you know, whether it's in science, whether it's in theology, whether it's in philosophy or whatever. I figured out how Muslims have fixed this, and here it is. Look at here, over on the right. It says Becca is a place mentioned in Surah 3. Ayat 96 of the Quran, a verse sometimes translated as verily the first house set apart unto mankind. But here's the important part. According to Muslim scholars, Becca is the ancient name for Mecca. Oh, this is the ancient name for Mecca, which, of course, we have figured out here on the show. didn't exist in the 7th century to begin with. So this is basically not solving their problem. They can say that Becca is the ancient name for Mecca all they want. I don't care. But how can you have an ancient name of a city that does not exist? That has to be the
You
next
don't
step.
understand science, you kuffar. This is miracle science, okay?
I this whole thing, when you start bringing this up, you're called a lot of names, is what and this is what Kufar phobia. He wrote this in Shad. He says, so Valley of Becca is the same as Mecca. Yes, and the Valley of Mecca is the same as Becca, and they're all the same. Don't you know? They have no evidence for either of them. We don't have to provide you any evidence for them, mind you. But just keep in mind that they are both the same, because one is an ancient name for Mecca, and the other one's the name for Mecca, but they did not exist at the same. It just drives you insane.
That's a sarcastic comment, just an FYI from Kufar phobia.
Yeah, I know. But it just drives me insane sitting there trying to read these type of things, And I know Kufar phobia was just joking around about that. But there's all kinds of people that don't, though, and then they will sit there and they will fall on their sword and say, "Well, we know Mecca existed." Well, how do you know? Well, the Hadith tell us. Oh, the Hadith. Well, how do you know the Hadith are true? Well, because of the narrations, the science of the Hadith. What science? Well, we know because they were narrated by so-and-so said so-and-so. You mean the hearsay?
Right.
No, it's the science. No, see, this is the whole, it's just maddening.
Yeah, it's
to-
once again the devil just insulting people's intelligence. He's insulting the Muslims, the first Arabs, just downright insulting them.
Well, so I got into a conversation a while ago. You brought this thing with actually a revert to Islam, and then she pulled in her sheikh or whatever because he was gonna explain it to me. All this. This is pretty much how the conversation went. Okay, the Quran is perfectly preserved. How do you know it's perfectly preserved?
Because it was memorized.
Because it was memorized. Well, how do you know it was memorized? Because the Hadith tell us so. Well, how do you know? Then I would bring up Hadith and say, no, those Hadith are false Hadith. Well, how do you know which Hadiths are correct? Well, it's the ones that the Quran tells us are correct. Well, but wait a second. You just said that the Quran validates.
Radical. Hold on. Let me be the devil's advocate. You ask me question because I came up to be a devil's advocate today because there is no devil over here.
But I'm the best Muslim there is. I'm 100% pious. I got a.
I think Robert's is our resident.
I'm the best Muslim there is.
We're gonna have, but anyway, go ahead, Adam.
So basically, Quran is perfectly preserved. You need to realize this to the dot, because you guys cannot find the dots there. That's point number one. So you cannot prove me wrong because there are not dots there, and Quran is 100% perfectly preserved.
Right.
Any hadith that you will see where verses are missing, the chapters are missing, the sheep ate the chapters, and all this. This is because Allah wanted to abrogate those things, because Allah wanted to get them forgotten, and for that is these are also this Allah wanted it to be forgotten, brother. Allah wanted it to be forgotten. That is why. So that is why they were removed and they were written over, brother. You need to see that the preserved Quran is the one which Allah wanted to preserve.
But they're not forgotten.
The thing which was
right. We found them, so he literally failed in his accomplishment. We found them, so they're not forgotten.
You need to understand this fact. Allah did not know about carbon dating and blue light. So that's a separate thing. So Allah fully did the whole thing that they would be forgotten and removed, which Allah wanted to forget. But that's what happened. You need to see that.
Yeah, Allah also didn't know that blind men shouldn't go out and fight jihad either. He had to be reminded by the blind man. He said,
That's a different subject, brother. Actually, Allah always wait for somebody to say something, then He reveals His verses.
Right.
I saw that it's always a response, It's a response.
And if you show up as a dinner party guest at Muhammad's residence, don't show up early. Show up on time. Don't ask him questions. Just eat your food and then get the hell out. Because
Brother Muhammad had to do ding dong with 11 wives in one night. So we
you
have
are
to give him that
wrong.
time.
No, you are wrong on that. It's the reason why is
Ready
because
to take
Allah
shit
said. So you had your fiber today, huh, DL? Because you need that fiber for that.
You know, man.
But no, I love the explanation.
72 wives. I can't pass that up.
DL, brother DL. Brother
Yes.
DL. Muhammad
72
was
wives,
given.
that means that you have 72 mothers-in-law too. Think of the
No, no,
consequences. there.
No, there's no mother-in-law
I mean,
in the
I'm
afterlife.
ready because I've never been married. I've been single my whole life. So
Or-
that's really going to come in handy for me.
Okay, there's
Or-
nothing to prepare you for that type of trauma, man. I'm just telling you.
Okay, all right.
Or-
72 birthdays I have to remember.
Yes, 72 honeydew list, man.
Oh my
Forget
God.
about it.
Hey guys, Muhammad was given a special miracle, which is the power of the genital equal to 30 men's power. And that is why he could do the ding dong with 11 women in one night. So that's a special miracle that Allah gave him.
I don't even want to think about that.
No, it
I
says
mean,
in
look at
Hadith.
No,
It's in Hadith.
What is
Hey,
Muhammad
hey,
his own Viagra
sorry.
distributor or what? I mean, was Muhammad the first, or not Muhammad, Allah the first one to invent Viagra? Is this what that?
No, it's Jamal. He
Jamal.
used Jamal. Okay? Come on, that's a perfect sponsor right there. But
Hey,
yeah, no.
Hey, Adam.
Yes, brother.
Can you explain that situation again where you were telling me the last 10 days of Ramadan? What is that? Eid or something like that?
So no, it's Ramadan. The Eid is after Ramadan.
Okay, so you were telling me that you used to see guys in the mosque how they would be
Itikaf.
they would try to be memorizing what the Quran said so that they could recite, and they were all contradicting each other. Can you explain that?
So basically, the last 10 days of Ramadan is specified for itikaf. That's a specific term where you leave your house and you live inside a mosque. So there is a portion of the mosque they'll draw certain curtains, and you will live inside the mosque, and you are not allowed to step foot outside the mosque for those 10 days or 5 days or 3 days, depending on which one you want to select. But like once you go in for 10 days, you will have to do 10 days. Once you go in for 5 days, you will have to do 5 days. So you will go in on the 21st of the Ramadan, the night of 20th, or you will go to the 25th, the night of 25th, or you will go to the 27th, the night of 26th. So you will remain in there. And in that time, after the Zohar prayer till the Asr prayer, there will always be khutbahs, the sermons, let's just put it this way. And one guy will give the sermon, the other guys will listen. The interpretations, you will always have issues, number one. Number two, the guys who are memorizing Quran, because after the Isha prayer, they will actually have to stand up. One guy will actually have to stand up, be the Imam, and he will have to recite during 20 rakahs the whole one book of Quran, right? There are 30 paras in Quran. I don't know how to say para in English. So Quran is segregated in 30 equal segments.
Paragraphs?
A sapara is a Jews.
Not paragraphs. They are
Okay.
paragraphs.
Stanzas.
Paraphrases?
It's a
Paraphrases?
chapter.
Chapter.
It's 30 sections.
No. Isa, chapter is not that. Chapter is chapter
No, it's
of
30 sections.
section.
Sapara is Urdu. Sapara is Urdu for Jews.
All
It's
right,
Jews
all
in
right,
Arabic.
all right. We can
Chapters.
talk about that later.
30
Continue.
chapters. Yeah, 30 chapters. So one guy had to recite the whole one segment, 1/30th of the Quran in one night. So he would actually read the Quran and memorize it. And he will just move himself and he keep on memorizing it because he have to recite it without reading it during the 20 rakahs at the end. Now, there will be 3 people standing behind him who will also be memorizing it while before this, so that when the first guy will forget something, one of the 3 will actually say something. So there were multiple instances when the first guy, who is the Imam, will actually recite something and he forgets and he says something else and he adds a different section of the verse. The first guy behind him will actually try to fix him, but this idiot actually forgot himself and he was not able to give him the right section. So that the 2 others, which are on the right and the left as well, they will both start speaking and it will become a mess. So the Imam will actually go back 3 verses, listen to all of them, he'll be quiet, he will go back like 2-3 verses and he will start doing the poem 3 verses behind, and this time maybe he'll fix it. Sometimes the second time will not fix it, and the
90.
third time will fix it. So this happens like when they are actually have the book and they have the book to memorize, yet 4 of them sometimes gets into a trouble that which one, and they actually read it again just before that. So that's the whole thing.
Adam, do they get punished if they get the Quran?
No, brother, come on.
If they get like no, I've heard stories like they
honest
get punished if they memorize the Quran wrongly.
That's kind of a question for me. Not only would they get punished for memorizing it incorrectly, but would they get punished for leaving the mosque? Is there a punishment for leaving the mosque outside the specified time?
Leaving the mosque, you can't leave the mosque. It is your etikaf. You said it to Allah that. So basically, if you are dedicating yourself to Allah for those 10 days or 3 days or 5 days, it's you who did that. But once you
what if I
move
just
out,
get sick of it and there's too many people around me that smell bad or something like that? Can I just leave or no?
that's a sin, right? You actually dedicated yourself, and now you are leaving your dedication. That's a sin upon you. It's a huge sin. There's no punishment, legal punishment for that. That's if you're asking a legal punishment, then there is no legal punishment. But Allah's punishment is then you have to do certain good deeds to compensate your sin. But like you have to be like, you cannot just leave that some people stink. Okay, like somebody in your home died. Okay, that's how you leave. Okay.
So recitation of the Quran is not an ironclad way of preserving the Quran, right?
So you are trying to destroy me being a devil's advocate, right?
Well, what I'm saying is Muslims always say, well, if you took all the Qurans in the world and you burned them, it would still be here in the memories of people. But we can clearly see what happens when people are allowed to use their memory in reciting the Quran. There's just a bunch of confusion. It's like the Tower of Babel, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's what comes up that, hey, back in those days in the 7th century, they did not have so much information. So they could do such a thing, which is all BS, man, which is like all like not BS, camel S, okay? Because
hey, you mentioned a portion of that. Go finish your thought, Adam.
Yeah, because right now you have a book to recheck. Back in those days, Quran came out in 23 years. Now you tell me you don't have a book to recheck and revalidate. It came out in 23 years. How can one person or 2 person or 4 person memorize the whole Quran, which came in 23 years, and know it exactly and can write it down 20 years after? Okay, sorry, 10 years after the death of Muhammad. It's an impossible thing.
Hey, if Zayd bin Thabit was a Hafiz, was he a Hafiz?
They say that
okay,
he was the best of the best.
Okay, so if he was a Hafiz, then why would he have to collect the Quran off of flat stones and bark off of trees and camel shoulder bones? He would just be able to memorize it and write it down, right?
The thing is, why not did they put it on barks of trees and stuff like that? Didn't they have vellum during that time? I mean, writing on a bark of a tree.
Yeah, that was
quite hard.
That was a confetti.
Well, they didn't have it. I just showed you a bunch of pictures. There's no trees in Mecca to write it down on. That's
what they got at their Office Depots.
Okay, Adam. Now you mentioned something about they had to memorize 1/30th of the Quran.
Yes.
In 10 days?
No. So every day they will recite 1/30th of the Quran. So in 30 days they will completely recite the Quran.
Okay, so they have to recite. Okay, because I thought you said they had to memorize.
Yes, memorize. So memorize because they are reciting it during the prayer without looking at the Quran. So that is why they have to first memorize it, because the prayer, when you are doing the salah of, like, if you know how to do salah, after the Surah Fatiha, you have to add some verses. Okay, so usually people recite Kul Huwallahu Ahad or Surah Kafirun or Surah Asr or something like that. But in those particular days, they will finish the whole Quran in 30 days. So in the 20 rakahs, they will keep on reciting some portion of the Quran, 1/30th of Quran one day, 1/30 of the Quran the next day, 1/30th of the Quran the next day, and in 30 days they will recite the whole Quran, but without looking at the Quran. So they have to memorize it before they actually get into the minbar, and as an imam they will They will read it or recite it for the people.
Okay, so I did the math on this because I'm anal retentive. 149,200 some odd words in the Quran. If you do that, if you memorize the Quran, break it into 1/30th, okay, that means that you have to memorize 4,975 words a day.
Oh, by
In
the way,
order to-
these people are already Hafiz. So they are not somebody like you and me. They already are Hafiz. So they have already memorized the whole Quran in the past. So they are just rechecking. So this is what I'm saying. It's not a person like me or you who can do that. These guys who do that are called Hafiz. So they are pre-Hafiz. They have already memorized the whole Quran, the whole 6,400 verses. They have already memorized them. They are, for that night, to recite it without looking at the Quran, they are re-memorizing it or re-verifying it before standing up.
Okay,
And how
so
many
yeah,
verses? How many verses?
it was 4,975 words a day. Which is 10 pages of 12 font in Microsoft Word, single spaced. And I thought you said they had to memorize it. And I'm like, how in the heck does somebody memorize that many words in one day? But you said that they already memorized it. Now they're verifying it because you have to do it 1/30th. I get that. Okay, so 30 days in a month. So, and what happens if they don't, and this is what DL said that if they don't do it correctly, then is there a penalty for that? Or
No, there is the penalty is because this is an honest mistake, obviously. So let's say the guy actually literally forgot he can't continue. He will suddenly go into the ruku, then he will stand up, then he will go into the sujood, and then he will nullify that 2 rakahs of prayer. He will look into the Quran again, and he will redo those rakahs again because he forgot and he cannot continue. So that is there is a shirk for that. So he has to redo that. So basically, but it does not happen because it's not just one guy. There are 2 or 3 guys standing behind.
who's checking the shake?
3 guys behind him. Told you.
And how do they know? What if they have it wrong?
Then if all of them are wrong, then the rest of the ummah who are reciting behind them, they are already ignorant. They are not Hafiz, so they don't know. So then everyone just studied wrong. Nobody knows that. And there was no video recording. There's no audio recording, so nobody knows what happened. Then.
Why don't they just write it down? For Pete's sake, the guy had 20 years to get it written down. Oh, they did write it down. I forgot about that. They did write it down before Usman got a hold of it and burned it all up. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to call it quits. It's a great time today, guys. I appreciate everybody chiming in and all the activity that we had in chat. Holy cow, you guys, we had all kinds of people in chat today. We had, of course, our girl Darcy, who we're praying for, Kufar Phobia, Slam RN. Is that Islam or just Slam?
RN is a registered nurse.
Oh, she is. Okay. And then, of course, Call Me Mom. Yes, she was here trying to see who else. Seal Broke. Does anybody know who this guy is? Seal Broke. He was commenting in there quite a bit. Dominic was in there. Dominic, you're playing both sides of the house here.
I know.
Dragon Daenerys was there, and if I missed you, I do apologize. Everybody that was in the studio, George was here. He's obviously left, and those of you who popped in and out. Your friend Frank Hahn, what was his name? Saya was here. Saya. He never did.
Say.
Okay. He's always welcome to come back whenever he wants to. Brad, you got something to add before we go?
I got a brief announcement. Okay, so all those Muslims that put in orders for Jamal, the only Muslim for Muslim men, there is a problem. We are investigating. It looks like because of the camel urine shortage, it looks like our producers were actually using human urine instead of camel urine. So we are looking into that. We are investigating that.
Oh, come on.
But we have a new exciting product launch. Okay, Aisha, the official, she's not the official spokesman, but Aisha is launching her own feminine hygiene product, made with real Zamzam water, to clean up the mess of the Jamal. Okay, just saying. So
okay, Brad, let's keep that for Tuesday. Too much imagery going on here.
Can I ask Isa? Isa, are you a Muslim?
Oh,
Isa?
you cannot fit him in any box.
Exactly.
That's a very
You
funny
cannot fit him
question.
in any box.
I actually come from a mixed background.
Uh-huh.
My father's family is, I would say, Sufi, and my mom's family is Jewish.
Wow.
How does that work out on holidays? I don't understand how
Wow.
you can possibly do that. I mean, we have the Passover, and then you go eat a pig, or I don't. How would that work? I don't.
Isa's
No,
Isa,
eat a camel. So
about
eat a
20 years
camel.
ago. About 20 years ago, Isa would be following the Grateful Dead around. Okay, just
I like
saying.
Be a
Deadhead.
deadhead.
They're great.
Deadhead.
I know,
I'm
I
a
mean,
rock guy, so
Yeah, he would be one of the guys in the Winnebagos, the VW buses, saying, "Hey man," yeah.
I'd probably be actually doing
That's
the
why
music
I like him. That's why I
myself.
like him. Yeah,
You
that's
can
why I
have
like
me as your lead bassist. I'll be your lead bassist.
There you go. There you go.
So you said your dad is Salafi, you said?
No, Sufi.
So okay, excuse me, Sufi. And so does he know that you're not a practicing Muslim no longer?
Well, my father passed away 2 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. My
And
dad
then
was
you-
actually very, very open-minded. His belief was if you talk to God, doesn't matter what language it is in, just make sure that you have a connection with God.
Isn't the Sufis the more mystical ones?
That's
The,
correct.
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
yeah, all right.
South
Okay.
Asian people tend to be very oriented to that overall.
Sure.
Really,
Isa,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that. Like not a lot of them. Like Sufism
Well,
is
historically, like I would say your grandparents probably were. Like your
Mhm.
family, like your grandparents, a long time ago. Like my father was born in the 30s. So I mean like a long time ago it was.
Holy cow.
Now it's not.
Golly.
That's older than my dad.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh my
mine
God. Power
too.
to
yeah.
him. Way to
That's
go.
10 years older than my dad.
But you're right, Adam. Now it's not. But a long time ago it was. People were very oriented to that. And they relatively got along better with other religions. Now it's after nationalism it's gotten really bad.
Yeah,
And
Pakistan, the main problem started in 1971 from the Bhutto era, the first Bhutto era, where he started to put in the blasphemy laws into the law and all. So that's when the things went in pretty deep down, dig deep. But before that, it was happening like a mob killing somebody because of the blasphemy or a person killing somebody from the blasphemy, but it wasn't a law. But Bhutto made it a law. So that's another issue. How did his bit? Why is he asking
I'm a
me?
blasphemy person. I'm totally free speech. That's one thing I love about America is that we have free speech here. You can believe whatever religion you want. There's a lot of freedom here that I don't think a lot of people
For
know
now.
about. Like,
Yeah,
dude,
I know, right?
dude,
wanna have
yeah,
that.
If the
dude,
left
dude.
had it, if the left had their now, Issa, okay. So are you mostly hanging around us Christians?
No,
Well,
Issa's here.
I love you,
Issa is
Christian.
here. Almost
Isa
every
hangs
single
out.
show we have, he's here almost twice a week. He doesn't, lately hasn't hasn't said a lot, but he's here all the time, and we appreciate his
So
opinion.
yeah, I know. I do recognize him. So
Sometimes we need to tell him to shut up because he's touting total nonsense. But I mean, he does.
Well,
he's
like
here.
me, he
Issa,
was taught that
are
if he
you
didn't
just
have
bearing
anything good to say,
witness
not to say
that
so.
that we speak about the love of God and things like that?
No,
That you hang around Christians?
What I like is, particularly in
Mhm.
these kind of spaces, we have free speech here. There's a lot
Mhm.
of places where things are canceled. There's a cancel culture that's going on, which I think is extremely unhealthy, in my opinion.
Yes,
Like, I
you're
don't
right.
know if you've heard about the situation with the actress from The Mandalorian, but to me, it's very offensive what's going on.
Oh
and
yes, very
I
much.
don't,
Mhm.
there might be some intense things that we're talking about here, but at least
Mhm.
we're anything can go in these discussions, which I think is, to me, that's a very healthy thing. I think we
It
need to
is.
be able to have open dialogue instead of like, okay, this is a scary thing. You can't say it. You're a hate monger now. And I'm like,
Right.
I'm very uncomfortable with that space, just to be very,
Okay.
transparent.
So
Gil
yours
has
right
some-
now is still just how you're assessing things in your heart and mind right now. Okay.
Frank Con, you have to speak
Yes.
with him one-on-one because you are in a big discussion with him. You are in for a big,
No,
long
no.
There's
discussion.
nothing
Hey, I
deep.
go little by little. No.
I wanted to hear what. Hold on, guys. I wanted to hear what DL was going to say something. I didn't quite make it out.
No, you said that Issa hadn't been talking very much in the last few weeks.
Right, and neither of you, by the way. Just
Yeah, and
Just
I said that he was, he was under the same understanding that I am, that if you didn't have anything good to say, you didn't say anything at all. So that's why we've been quiet. So.
so what does that mean? Those of us who have been saying, I'm just
That we have
No,
something good to say. We've been having things good to say.
There's a
The Eric?
question. Yeah, there's
we
a
have that
question here that
everlasting gospel.
Wadu had a question for Issa. How did his parents get married? Did that work out?
Yeah, I mean, overall it worked. They had a spiritual guide, and my mom was a product of the 60s, so they had a spiritual guide. They had a guru, and they
Timothy Leary
got married together. That it was like an arranged marriage. So yeah.
It's an arranged marriage, like a Muslima to a Jew, and arranged like okay, no. That cannot happen. That cannot happen. It's not possible. How?
Okay, this is the story.
It's
Now, think
apparently
about this. This is the story
Many
Issa got from. Am I correct on this? Is the story that you got from your mother and your father,
Yeah,
or
well, I
is
mean,
this the story that you got from your grandparents? But I'm assuming
no.
if your father was born in the 30s, that you probably did not know his parents.
I knew his mother.
Okay.
I met her when I was 4 years old, and I never saw her again.
Okay, but what I'm saying is it is an explanation of how they met.
Well, they met through their spiritual guide. Their spiritual guide arranged their marriage.
Okay, so it
and
didn't have
that's
anything to do with the parents then.
No. My father was sort of what you would call a monk. He was a renunciate. They have.
Hold on. Eric,
kind
hold
of
on. How can they both have one spiritual guide? Because one is a Muslim, one is a Jew. How can they both have one spiritual guide? Like, what is this spiritual guide? What is he like?
because
Musa Jew or what? Like,
they
Well,
met
I
at the Monterey
you
Pop
know, in
Festival.
South Asia, there were a lot of take Shirdi Sai Baba. He had Vedic thought practitioners as well as Muslim ones that followed him. Now he's considered a deity among the Vedic practitioners. So in South
that's
Asia,
a different
everything went on. You know what I'm saying? That's a normal thing.
so your
people-
father was not a Jew in a sense. He was born in a Jewish family. So that is why he's going to this spiritual guide.
My mother, right.
Mother.
Yeah. My mom was more of a new age spiritualist, spiritual seeker. But
Okay, so
my mom's family is all Jewish though. Even though they're not practitioners of Judaism.
got it.
I have
Now that
maybe-
kind of makes
They're
sense.
she was ethnically Jewish and not religiously.
Yes.
Okay, that makes more sense.
But a lot of Jewish people are though. A lot of Jewish people are
It's true.
ethnically Jewish and not religiously Jewish.
If you go to Israel, you'll find that a lot of them are not practicing.
Even
Jews.
here in America,
Okay.
it's you might do some mitzvot and that's it, but it's not really.
Well, you have the same thing as people are Catholic and they're not practicing Catholics. Look at our president, for Pete's sake. That's just one great example. Okay, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. I probably have the NSA knocking on my door later today. Okay, guys. All right. Well, great show.
Jamzi's question.
What's
Jamzi has a question, Isa.
Who has a question?
Difference between Sufi and Salafi.
Oh, sure, I can
Oh,
help
yeah.
you with that. If can I say that? Can I answer that quickly?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So I would say Salafi is actually more of a Reformationist movement. It's actually relatively new. Sufi tradition has been around for a very, very long time. Hundreds and hundreds of years, if not at least 1,000. It's been around for a very, very long time. So when you see Star Wars and you see the Jedi are kind of a fusion of Sufis and Zen Buddhists. It's a kind of a fusion of both of those cultures into one. Salafi is a very kind of, I would say it's a very conservative movement. It's coming out of nationalism. The argument that Salafis make is that they are the Salaf. They're the first rank behind the Prophet of Islam. They are, and Wahhabi is connected with this too.
I was just going to ask that same thing. They had a Reformation, and this is what we got: Wahhabism.
And it's the same thing. It's pretty similar. They believe they are technically under the umbrella of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah or Sunni. They are
If
are
I may
Hanbali.
describe these two in a single line, Sufism is more towards the spiritual, but Salafism or Wahhabism or Sunnah wal Jama'ism is more towards the scriptures or the text. Or the text. So they drive through the text depending on whichever text. Do you think that's a more easy definition for our viewers?
I think it's a good definition. I would say I would temper the second one a little bit more. It's like they're more into text and I would say religiosity. So the thing is that's the important thing. Are you following what is that called? The orthodox, the interpretation of the orthodox.
So they're going back to the traditions and the Sunnah.
But the problem
that's why they're called Sunnis are called Sunni, because they're supposed to follow the Sunnah.
The difficulty with the argument with Salafism that can occur is if they claim that they go from the first rank, right? So a lot of these traditions, like, chain of narration, would not have validity. Like all the schools of thought, even though they are followers of the Hanbalist school of thought, they won't claim that they are, for the most part, because they're saying they go right back to the first rank. But that would be a very difficult situation because that's 1,400 years ago, So in
essence, Eric, the problem is that any sect of Islam that you pick up and you go to the lower sects, you will not find a straight answer, and that's what my problem was as well. The Deobandis, the Salafis, the Sufis, and Ahl Sunnah wa Jamaat. These were the four major sects. One of the Deobandis are almost 25% of Pakistan, and the rest also includes the everyone. But like these were the major sects in Islam, subsects of Sunnism, and in the eastern part of our part, and everyone has their own logics. I will just call it logics, like the way Isa is describing, and these logics doesn't make sense at all. Like you go into the logic of each and every one, and you will see there are loopholes in every logic. And it does not make sense. If you start probing them, the chain will break suddenly. Isa, what do you think? Like, is it correct to say it this way?
I think it is really difficult. It's a valid concern. Like, it's interesting you brought up Deobandis. That's a very South Asian group which actually uses their narrative. They use Sufi terminology and stuff, but they're also but behind the doors they're very, very strict and they're very orthodox, which is interesting.
Exactly.
It is very hard. It is fair, and there's so many subsects within subsects. Like, it's interesting, and I think it's an unfair thing for Muslims to critique Christians on, where they say, well, Christians have so many subsects and so many groups. Muslims do too. You have to pull off the sheaf and you can see that there are a lot of different subsects, about what tradition is okay, what is considered a bid'ah, like what's innovation. Is innovation bad? Is innovation good? You have all these complexities that exist within Muslim communities, and there's subsects within subsects, and I'm like, I think that's important to examine that exists also.
And by the way, the Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah, the problem with Jama'ah is, by the way, not the radical Jamal, it's Jama'ah. So basically, certain people can sit together and they will give you a verdict. And that verdict has to be acknowledged, irrespectively. So that's a Jama'ah. So they did the agreement that, let's just say, I'm giving you an arbitrary example, can we eat a lamb's leg? Okay. And these people will sit down and they will think on and they will work on certain hadiths and certain Quranic verses, and they will drive certain thing and they'll say, yes, you can eat the lamb leg. So this is called Jama'ah. So now the problem with Jama'ah is that you are trying to say that XYZ is actually right, whether it is not, for maybe, let's say, 20 other sects. So, the Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah is another problem in itself, because the rest of them actually fight with them because they said certain things to be right, which are actually not right, because they do not accept certain ahadith, and hence it's a huge complexity in itself.
It sounds like a topic for another show. I mean, because and I don't say that flippantly. I just say that's because there's just a lot there. You know, if you try to divide up the sects, because this is one of the often made charges against Christianity. Said, oh, well, how do we know which Christianity to follow? There's over 30,000 denominations, don't you know, of Christianity. So which one is the true denomination to follow? I knew Islam had quite a few different denominations in there. I just didn't realize that there was such a wide disparity in what is taught. Okay, guys, we got a couple. Let's see. We don't need to address that. We can figure out a topic for next week. Do you guys have anything else to add before I sign us off?
Are you going to continue this next time? Your topic? We
I don't
barely
know.
scratched the surface, I'm sure, with Jay Smith.
Yeah, I'm waiting until I finish this course that I'm taking with Jay.
Okay.
Before I venture out into the idea of Mecca and its uncertainty, but we can, I don't know, we'll converse going back and forth this week, and we'll come up with a great topic for next week. So God bless everybody. Thank you for coming, and we will see you next Sunday on the Crossing the Crescent discussion group.
Yeshua Akbar al-Azim.